Happy Tuesday, everybody. You know what it means. Power Rankings Show is live on Twitter Spaces and on demand on the MLS Today podcast feed. I am Andrew Wiebe. As sometimes, I guess I was on vacation last week, and I think somebody filled in for me a couple weeks before that. So normally it's Matt Doyle and I, but I believe that Doyle is off attending to either cats or some other personal business that's far more important than breaking down the MLS Power Rankings, which, of course, you can find at MLSsoccer.com. and the MLS app. Here's what we do on the show, in case you hadn't figured it out. We used to do guests 4, 10 through 1. Well, that got boring and predictable, and we talked to the same people or about the same clubs all the time. So we opened it up. We can talk about whatever we want on this show. From 28 to 1, we will choose, and thus I have chosen. We will start with San Jose at number 28 this week. Michele Giannone is here from TUDN. Michele, what's up, man? How you doing? I am just, the energy is coursing through me. I had a wonderful time this morning on MLS Today talking to Jamin Moore about Matias Almeyda, the final days, the final hours, the final minutes, the legacy. And I know that you have a relationship born in, some might say, lockdown with Matias and special insight on San Jose. So I wonder how you're feeling on this the day after Matias Almeyda's time in MLS came to an end.
Before talking about Almeyda, I just want to say, drag him, David Gass, in your anti-Austin.
If nobody hears the pre-show meetings and they see my tweets, I put those public. But what you didn't hear from David was just absolute slander, just slanderous, terrible Austin talk for the vast majority of our hour pre-show meeting. He didn't want me to share that, but Michele, now that you're here, I feel free to share it. Matias, though, tell me about your experience at MLS's back with him and what you make of all this.
Yeah, my experience with Matias goes back to Liga MX when he was winning everything, or with Chivas. I covered that team. I was in Guadalajara the day they won the Liga MX title, and then I was there when they won the CONCACAF Champions League. So I've had the opportunity to meet Matias before, but he was amazing, and that's part of the legacy. And that was something that Jay Moore was talking to you, and you guys have done a brilliant job yesterday on Extra Time and this morning on MLS Today about the relationship that he has with everyone around him. When I was on MLS's back in 2020, I was one of the very few fortunate people to be there with Nico Cantor covering from Univision and TUDN. Matias was there, and he was very positive. He was very good to us. He helped us a lot in a time where it was very challenging to work, to get access, to interview players, to interview him. He sat down with us twice, and he was very, very helpful to us, and I'm very grateful for him. And it's something that you see on the players and you see in their organization. And again, I think Jay Moore was talking about this morning. The locker room and every player that he has coached love him. Maybe they don't understand in some cases the way he is, and sometimes players cannot be on his side. But when that player leaves the team that Almeyda is coaching and experience something else, they miss him. And I think we saw that. I was in San Jose on the broadcast this weekend, and I spoke with several players that week, and the locker room was 100% behind him. And I think that's part of his legacy that he's leaving from MLS. Everybody loved him.
Look, I'm going to miss him. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to miss some of the things that we saw on the field from his team, in particular in the last year and a half, 2 years. The first 2 years, it was fun, man, and it was positive, and they were getting more than the sum of their parts, you thought. And then it sort of got to a point here where maybe the tactical side didn't work. As opposed to belaboring the point here, and Matias Almeyda is going to land on his feet, and he will continue to be a story in the international soccer world, whether that's internationally with Chile or Colombia or otherwise in South America or back in Liga MX or in club soccer in South America. We will see him again, and I suspect very, very soon. What will we see from this San Jose team in the near and medium term, in your opinion? I mean, you just saw them this weekend. Jeremy Ebobisse with another brace. He's on fire. This is the Ebobisse that we hoped for when he was traded from Portland to San Jose. And that felt like a move that was a little bit outside of the Matias mold that we had seen and had sort of failed in the transfer dealings.
And I think when we take a step back, and I encourage everyone to read Sam Stejskal, a piece on the ownership in San Jose in the Athletic from yesterday. It's very easy. The quick reaction is to blame everything on the ownership, and they are the ones to blame for the most part. But what we are seeing from San Jose this year, I think it's the part where we can blame, and I think Matias Almeida is the main responsible. Because, and you guys again have done a brilliant job talking about this on Extra Time yesterday. This is a team that it's unbelievable, and it's something that it cannot be possible that they haven't won a game. This is a talented roster, and especially midfield, and the attacking side is really talented. They did a good job bringing Grigus. He's been amazing this year. Monteiro, Bobby C last year. Francisco Calvo, which he's not been playing great, but he's a piece that you can count at least for depth. Kikanovic is injured, but he's coming back. Chofis is injured, but he's coming back. Let's see what happens with him after his loan ends in the summer. And I think that's the point that's it's a little bit of a stain on Matias' resume and through his 4 years, almost 3 years, and a little bit more in San Jose, that I think this year he was the problem. And this team is a fringe playoff team. It's a talented roster, and I believe that now, Leach said it yesterday, the new coach, Covello, they just need to fix the tactics on the defense, because this is a very talented team that it can, if they can find a balance, this should be a team that even they haven't won anything on this first 7 weeks, they can make a push for the playoffs, because it's a talented roster. And that's the problem that Matias it's looking back, that this team had the talent to be better this year, and it's on Matias, at least for this year.
We will see what Alex Covello can do with these San Jose Earthquakes. They have Bay City tonight in Open Cup, and then Seattle at home on the weekend. Big matches for them, and maybe we'll get a new coach bump, a little bit of a vibe coming off this, but we know those players miss Matias Almeida. Michele, before I let you go here, we have Sporting Kansas City up next in our rundown at 25, and that's not a space we're normally accustomed to seeing Kansas City in the last, decade or so. I distinctly remember your trip to Kansas City. Unfortunately, was not able to spend any time with you, but you did go to some of my favorite haunts. I want your take on what's happening right now for this team and for Peter Vermes.
I think, and we saw it against LAFC this Sunday or Saturday. I don't remember. Sorry, this weekend. How just one player, they miss Ili Sanchez a lot. Remy Walter is not your ideal number 6, and they've been dealing with injuries with Oriol Roussel at the beginning of the year, and they have a real striker problem. Shelton is not the solution. The striker that they got from Serbia or Montenegro, hasn't contributed to anything, and I think it's impossible for them to just wait and see if Russell can do what he did on 2021. And I think Vermes has a big problem on the midfield. The lack of depth, it's worrisome. And I talk about with this, I remember with Matt Doyle, that MLS After Dark that Saturday, that this is a team that Vermes is going to have issues to find a solution, especially at midfield, because they don't have a legit number 6. They lost Ili Sanchez, and they haven't been able to replace him. And I think that's a big hole.
No Gadi Kinda from injuries. We know Alan Pulido is out. It feels like a generational gap for this Kansas City team. And given the success that was sort of underpinned by that early generation acquired through the super draft, we're talking the Beaslers, Espinoza, Zusis, etc., and so many others, if you go back to the history of success for Kansas City. Once those contributions have started to wane a little bit, the foreign signings haven't picked it up. The academy signings have not contributed outside of maybe, Gianluca Busio certainly, but he was sold on. That's a success story. But outside of that, and maybe Felipe Hernandez in spurts, it's been tough for Sporting Kansas City. Got to find a way forward. Michele Giannone, always enjoy talking to you, man. We're just pulling you in everywhere these days, but I appreciate you, all right?
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yeah, next time, Fox and Pearl, little entree, little cocktail. I will definitely be there with you. Felipe, let's talk some Atlanta United, man. If you are around, hit that unmute. This was a rough weekend for Atlanta, not just because of the 0-0 draw with Cincinnati that drops them one spot in these power rankings to 20, but because Brad Guzan now confirmed with the Achilles rupture, and it's Guzan, it's Joseph Martinez, it's Ozzy Alonso, it's foundational pieces, both tactically and emotionally, for Gonzalo Pineda that are now out long term. What is the state of affairs in Atlanta right now in your mind?
I think Brad Guzan's injury, it did remind me of when Joseph Martinez went down in Nashville in 2020. It was that sort of gut punch to the club, to the organization, the players. You could really feel it in the stadium when Brad Guzan went down with that injury. And obviously, after, in my opinion, a disappointing 0-0 draw against a 10-man FC Cincinnati, even in the post-game press conference, both Gonzalo Pineda, Miles Robinson, Andrew Gutman, these players were a lot less focused on their current form, and more so concerned about just the well-being of their teammates. In this case, it was Brad Guzan. So, Guzan, he's hard to replace. That's why it reminds me of Joseph. He's a guy that's played 8 seasons of the Premier League, several World Cups, lifted MLS Cup here in 2018, and he's been really like the one of those foundational pieces, like you mentioned. So I think this week it's been about Gonzalo Pineda is trying to focus this team on tomorrow night's U.S. Open Cup match, but I think you could tell that just the vibe is changing, and I think it's the narrative right now, both from the players at the club and the fans and us, pundits and analysts in the sport, is like who steps up, who steps up when you lose leaders like Joseph Martinez, Ozzy Alonso, and Brad Guzan, a young team, an inexperienced team that has struggled to manage games, to read games, to be situationally aware in MLS matches since last season. And now you lose these guys that are on the pitch, sort of driving you and keeping you motivated. So I think it does set up interesting storylines for Atlanta. I think one being that when these injuries happen, your succession planning gets thrown upside down. And I think certain players like a Miles Robinson suddenly get thrust into these leadership roles, and he may wear the armband, he may not, but now it's like all eyes on Miles Robinson. Like, this is the quiet leader on the team, but someone that's going to have to step up, and someone that has become just as important, if not more, for Atlanta United than someone like Joseph Martinez.
So I'm looking at the record. I'm looking at the form here. They've only lost twice in 7 games. They're in the playoff field. Currently would have a home game in the playoffs, but they're going to have to find a way to stay there as other teams sort of round into form with, as you said, the guys that they built around for this year. Who does the pressure go on to, and who is Pineda going to lean on? I mean, Almada just got here. Like, we know he has the talent, he has the price tag. There is a history of price tags not seemingly mattering that much toward production in Atlanta. Like, who does the pressure fall onto, and does the style of play change at all without Joseph Martinez long term?
Well, that's a huge question. It's one that I discussed with my editor Alex Avanos this morning. I think the style of play, and I wrote about it last week. They have similar, for instance, pressing statistics as the 2018 team that won, which they're not. But you can't boast about these stats. They're both, that 2018 team and the 2021 team finished last in MLS in pressing, but obviously one team was a lot more effective in converting these chances. Now, Atlanta United right now, I think they're top 5 in MLS in chances created. They're just not scoring. And so that is a problem. Does that change the style? Like, maybe. I think that to answer your first question, that puts a lot of pressure on first-year head coach Gonzalo Pineda to figure out the tactics to perhaps change something up top. He told me that he does not like playing with 2 strikers, but they're not getting goals from the people that you've mentioned before, like Thiago Almada, Marcelino Moreno, and Luis Araujo is just coming back from injury. So I do think that there's going to be pressure on this young coaching staff to get things right, to just navigate the MLS schedule. And again, I think pressure is on Carlos Bocanegra again to figure out how to fill the holes in the roster. Now, we reported along with Paul Tenorio on Saturday night that Atlanta United, according to multiple sources that we've spoken to, are seriously interested in Matthew Hoppe, who I just saw a tweet from Tom Bogert.
Was just about to ask you about it.
Yeah. So Jonathan Spector, according to Tom Bogert, is in Majorca scouting that game. So that's one piece. Is it the right piece? I think that's a big question, because Atlanta and Carlos Bocanegra tend to just throw attacking players at this roster and hope things work. That's sort of like the.
How would he fit? How would he fit in your mind? Is he? Do they see him as a striker, like as a sort of for now replacement for Joseph?
I think it's more striker, because they have wingers, and he's playing as a winger. He's been playing as a winger for the men's national team last summer. He's been out of the picture since then. But it's the big question is if this goes through, if this deal gets made, he's under 21. He could be U22 signing. Are you getting the Hoffenheim Matthew Hoppe, or are you getting Majorca Matthew Hoppe that isn't playing for a team that's battling relegation? And this is a player that's probably still looking to get into this Qatar 2022 U.S. roster. And it's a crowded attack in Atlanta. To my point, there are a lot of attacking players. They brought in Ronaldo Cisneros, a player from Chivas, who I sort of question that signing because he's never been prolific. He was scouted in the same time period that the club decided to sign Dom Dwyer too during the offseason in Mexico. And so he hasn't really worked out. He struggled a lot, Cisneros, against Cincinnati. So does Hoppe provide that, young grit, that the fresh legs, the sort of experience of being an international on a team that just needs a little bit of, in my opinion, swagger, because they've lost a lot of it. So it's interesting if that goes through. Is he a winger? I don't think so. I think Matthew Hoppe is more of a 9 or a second striker, and that's one way you could help Atlanta United if this deal gets done.
Boy, tough times on the injury front for Atlanta, but as always with the Five Stripes, there are headlines to keep in mind, because things can change very, very quickly with their willingness, let's say, to invest and reinforce. Felipe, appreciate your time, man. We're going to keep it rolling, but all eyes on Atlanta, Chattanooga in the Open Cup. That ought to be a fun one. All right, let's keep it moving to the Houston Dynamo. First time on the show, but happy to have him. Glenn Davis, you know him as the voice of the Dynamo. Been in these soccer streets for a long time. Glenn, how you doing, man?
Thanks for having me on. Enjoying listening to everybody, Andrew.
Yeah, it's the best part of this show is I basically just get to hit up all my my friends, acquaintances, and people I want to know and meet around MLS and pull them in to talk soccer. 1 loss in 7 games for Paulo Nagamura, unbeaten in 5. That is a successful start to his tenure as Dynamo head coach.
Yeah, I think so. I think there were a lot of question marks. People don't think the Dynamo got their number one choice as a coach, but they got a young, rising, a very ambitious coach that, as everybody on this, is going to know, he was a fiery midfield player that's kind of come over to the way he's coaching and working with the team. I see him really, really growing into it now. I see even subtly just confidence and even the way he's walking, moving, little things like that. Some results are good to get. Seeing out a game with 10 men is a good thing for the Houston Dynamo. Probably didn't occur in the past. So, there's still a lot to learn here. But I think with new ownership, new leadership, after poor ownership and leadership, it's improved things immensely. The roster's a lot more competitive. Is it the finished article? No, it's not. Are you waiting for a big star? Yes, you are, in Hector Herrera. But I think part of this is raising a bar that was really low down here. Low expectations, low bar, both on and off the field, and the whole new regime with Ted Siegel as the owner, Pat Onstad as the GM, Asher Mendelson as the technical director, new assistant coaches. You finally have a reserve team in town instead of this nonsense 6 hours away in the Rio Grande Valley. So all of these things combined have, I think, lifted the spirits and have shown people that there is an ambition here, but it's not going to be easy to turn around, both on and off the field.
So 15th right now in the power rankings, 5th in the Western Conference. All 5 of the top 5 in the Western Conference were non-playoff teams. Just want to give people, like from last year, just want to give people that context. Tell me what you think Paulo has done right on the field.
Well, I think right now, like any new coach, you've captively got everybody's attention, and I think they're buying into him. I honestly think the collective spirit, the fight, I think the improvement of the roster, in other words, for a team that ended in last place last year, that sometimes had people in the market going, "Oh, he had a great season," or "He was excellent." Nobody's excellent when you're in last place. I'm sorry. I mean, let's be a little bit, a little bit realistic.
Some standards here, right?
Yeah, and I think it's hard for you hear that, and you now will see that there's a number of guys that were starters last year that are not starting. Somebody's going to make way for the minutes of Hector Herrera, that's for sure. And I also think he's subtly changed his tactics in certain games, like you guys all heard after the San Jose game, where he said, sometimes chaos has to be dealt with chaos, right? Would I have liked to see him maybe, or other soccer people like to have seen him manage the game out better and maybe find a little possession in this game? Yeah, probably. But look, at the end of the day, they won 4-3. And that's different than what would have happened in the past. So I think subtly for certain games, he's changed things. I still think they're struggling in the area of width and getting a bit of a wide game, especially to correspond with a striker that's a more traditional number 9 in Sebas Ferreira, who came in with a big drum roll.
Do you think there's any, I don't know the right word, is there any fool's gold to this start right now? I'm looking at the form, I'm looking at the records, and we know what the Dynamo have sort of hung their hat on historically, and that's winning games at home. And you've had 5 home games and 7 overall, and 3 have been draws. Is there any sense of a missed opportunity there, and that maybe just, look, that 5th from the jump from the bottom is not sustainable? Or do you think that this team is going to find a way to hold or maybe even improve?
I think I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. A high price center forward has to be, at some point we're going to make a determination on Sebas Ferreira. There's still belief in him. He did not have a good game in the last game. I would only say in his defense, he has really not had a lot to attack from wide areas. A lot of this attack now is built around Darwin Quintero and Fafa Pico. If you're looking long term, I'm not sure that's the way you want to be looking at it, right? You've had them on the team before. You haven't made the playoffs. Will Darwin continue to be a starter? I mean, he's had some magical moments. Then again, I think those 2 guys, if you're really being honest, should have won you the game the other night, right? Because they had 2 really clear-cut chances in the first half. So to that point, look, anybody could be fool's gold this early in the year, right? I mean, that's the craziness about this league. It's even the so-called smartest football people around our league, we all get it wrong. Every single one of us who's listening to this phone call, right? Every single technical director gets players wrong, right? Even with all the data these days. So
that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're all here, right? We all love it. We all enjoy it. But I would just say that there is an improvement with the competition. There is an improvement with the structure. There is an improvement with, I think, the quality of the team that's being put out on the field. It's not the finished product, but I do expect this team to be contending for a playoff spot. I think everybody else does. And the Dynamo, I think, are sick and tired of being in 9th or 10th and looking at the numbers and the possibilities at the end of the season. People down here are ready for them to, be a team that's in the middle of the pack, but it still has a long way to go.
Got to earn that. Last one for you, Glenn. Been great to have you on here, even if it's brief. I know this is a rapid fire show. Ache, he's not here yet. Have you seen just his signing change perception or interest, and how do you think his presence in the team will change the club?
Hector Herrera, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you guys all know the market we're in here. There's a lot of fire between Mexico and the U.S. here when it comes to football. Noted star, Mexico has come to Houston so many times. I was talking to a great friend of mine down in Mexico, Efrain Flores, who actually at Pachuca gave him his first Liga MX game yesterday. It's hard to tell because I have to think initially there's going to be a lot of excitement. I don't think there's any question. People have been watching him with Atletico Madrid. People have been watching him with Mexico. We've never had a star of this stature. Nobody's ever spent for a star of this stature. So I think there are some indicators and data and maybe a few more season tickets. I bet as it gets closer, that will also jump. But like I said, it's all got to be supported with a lot of other things, right? It's all got to be supported with the way you market the club on and off the field, reaching out and more community outreach to the international community here, which, still remains kind of a forlorn conclusion. We've got Nigerians, we've got Central Americans, we've got this huge base of international soccer fans that Asians, Indians, I mean, all categories down here that to me are just unique potential ticket buyers that have not been reached that you will have to figure out how to go after. And that can be done.
Would love to see that building rocking like the back in the days of Robertson Stadium, of the early days of now BBVA. We shall see if Hector Carrera can make that happen. Right now, the Dynamo in the playoff field. Glenn Davis, voice of the Dynamo, the man in Houston for soccer. We appreciate you, Glenn.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew, and hello to everybody out there.
All right, let's keep it rolling. Patrice, I see you in here, man. You're a listener. Request down there on the mic, dude, to jump in and speak when you get an opportunity. I know you got some business to attend to up in Montreal, but I would love to talk Djordje and Djordje for there you go. What's up, man? Up 6 spots to 12. Club de Foot, Montreal. Patrice Bernier, the legend. What's up, man?
Sorry, I said you can say CF Montreal now, so.
I know, but there's a lot of habits
in Montreal, so.
I went from Impact to Club de Foot to CF, and now I'm just like, I'm chopping, I'm mixing and matching. Tell me, we've talked on the WhatsApp a good bit about Djordje and about this team. Tell me the perception of Djordje right now within the coaching staff, within your mind, of the season that he's putting on, the improvement that he's had over the course of 2 seasons up north.
Yeah, I think Djordje is having a very good season, especially the last few weeks. Evolution of what people were maybe had hoped for. I'm pretty sure Wilfried Nancy saw last year a great top assist man with Carlos Gil, but can he give more? Can he be more decisive? Can he match being a bit selfish, you could say, with being unselfish? And now in the last few weeks, if you look, things have spiraled upwards for CF Montreal. You have they've scored 11 goals. Out of those 11 goals, 6 of them Djordje Mihailovic is involved. 4 goals, 2 assists. So it says that. And now when you see him, he's able to take on people, score on his own, find the right pockets. I feel Wilfried Nancy has put him in given more flexibility, more room to be a bit freer, move around, and not be as maybe predictable at the beginning of the season where he was maybe closer to the forwards up top. So it's very promising. And of course, everybody's mentioning that, he's maybe a front runner or a dark horse in terms of a MLS MVP. But definitely, being Djordje Mihailovic, you got to look at this is a World Cup season. I want to try to have a great season, try to get sold and get into Greg Berhalter's list and be part of the team in June. And he's doing a great job right now of knocking on that door.
So while CCL was going on, 3 L's for Montreal in league play, a draw against Atlanta, now 3 straight wins, Cincinnati, Red Bulls both on the road, Vancouver at home. They're at Philly and then home against Atlanta and Orlando in their next 3. You just mentioned Djordje getting sold. That's got to be, if you're a Montreal fan, a fear, right? Like you have this MVP caliber candidate that the team went out and got within the league and really nailed on the signing front. What are the odds that Djordje is a Montreal player at the end of this season, do you think, Patrice? Do you think he'll be sold?
I think the odds, if he keeps up like he is right now, because we all know the importance be able to maintain, to be consistent. Now, last year are saying, oh, he's a decisive player, he can score goals, take the team on his shoulders, if you could say. Now, can he maintain that? In terms of being sold, yeah, I believe that could happen. Now, him leaving, we've seen Tejan stay last year. We've seen Alphonso Davies being sold and several other players where they have been sold maybe during the summer. But their clubs, their MLS clubs, have been able to maintain them, retain them for the rest of the season. And I think also solely for the player, if ever he were to get sold, you want to stay on course to be able to make the national team player pool and be at the World Cup. Now, sometimes moving mid-season, going somewhere else where you have to adapt, you kind of lose your way, and maybe you're not necessarily a starter, or you lose your position when you get to Europe. So that's something also to look forward to in terms of Djordje Mihailovic. But I'm pretty sure he's focusing on the next game and what's happening, and now it's to see if teams are going to knock on the door to have a price tag on him if he maintains the performance that he has right now. And it'll be attractive for him, the CF Montreal, and they'll be able to choose which avenue they want for after, if it's a possibility of him being sold. But definitely right now, great start to him. Turnaround of the team, he's part of that. If they can maintain the bar that they have and being in the competition for the playoffs and staying in the top tiers of the league, yeah, definitely there'll be clubs knocking on the door this summer looking for Djordje Mihailovic to come and get them for their team for the next European season.
Wonderful story here in MLS, Djordje. A big proponent of players and the league being set up in a way for players to be able to find the best situation for them, and thereby for clubs to find the best situation for their own success. And that's certainly happening for Djordje and Montreal right now. I got to ask you about another center midfielder, young central midfielder. I'm talking to a legend here on the Canadian side, Ismael Kone. What have you seen from him so far into the Canadian national team? I don't think I've got your thoughts on Kone yet.
Young player. He joined the team last year and, had his first few minutes this season and started off very well. Showcased that he's not afraid to play at this level. He's got the skill set to play at this level. Now he's a regular starter. Like you mentioned, has entered the player pool of the national team, is on the radar. And as a 19-year-old, maybe he's attracting even more people because the younger you are and the more you perform, of course, teams are looking at, okay, this kid has got some tools and he's still really young. And everybody's always thinking of he can help us now and probably be sold in the next few years in another window. So Ismael Kone right now doing very well, got to stay grounded. But if he keeps up like this, like he said, John Herdman said that the national team did not have a center midfielder of his profile. So definitely if he maintains his position as a starter in Montreal, and in June and in the next international windows, he'll be called upon and probably get more minutes and win a spot. I don't think in terms of a starter in the national team, but definitely as being part of the player pool that could be at the World Cup in 2022. But it's all about consistency and being a regular starter and regular performances. But he definitely had a very good season and staying grounded. And I think he still has a lot of upside to his game that we could see. He's still raw, but we're seeing a lot of things that are very good for a young player, midfielder, able to go forward, score a few goals, has assists so far. So it's very promising and interesting for this player. And let's see if he can maintain that, and CF Montreal can maintain the performances and the standard that they have. And for him to be in the starting 11, because players like Hamdi, Piet are coming back from injuries, but he's definitely won points to be able to be on the side of Wanyama, to be a mainstay on the starting lineup.
One of the true joys of this league right now is watching young guys enter lineups and try to stay there and performing at high levels and breaking in with the national team. So many more cases of that now than we've seen in the past. It's awesome to see Ismael Kone in Montreal. Up 6 spots to 12 are CF Montreal. See, I almost said it, Patrice. I know you're in the car, man. I know you're on the way to work, to the studio. I will let you go, but thank you for your insight on Djordje and Ismael.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's get to our top 10 here. Michael Lahoud's going to join us here for number 8. That's Austin. But number 10 is Dallas, keeping it in Texas. Red Bulls at 9. Austin at 8. Orlando at 7. We'll have Miguel Gallardo to talk Orlando. NYC at 6. Nashville at 5. Galaxy at 4. And then we have Chuck Booth on Philly. Alicia Rodriguez on LAFC, and Ari Lelandwall on Seattle to finish out the top 3. Let's go to Austin. Up 4 spots. Up a man. Michael Lahoud.
Oh man, this has been a long time coming. Let's do this.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I have to, as is my habit, I am going to just have to mute you for the entirety of this conversation, as I have to all the Austin supporters in my mentions. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm having fun with you, Austin. But look, this was, we can talk about the bonus game side if we want, but this was an emotional win for Austin. I think that was pretty clear. And it seemed like they feel like it was a bit of a turning point. Why is that?
It was the first time on the road where there was a comeback victory, and the first time in a long time that the club won on the road. And just the manner in which they did it. Yes, you go a man up, but it's what you do with a man up. Mind you, it wasn't one goal that they came back from against a DC United team who was desperate, the wounded animal in that game, playing at home against a DC team that was rested and looked very much rested in the first half. I thought Ola Kamara, before he went off the deep end with the second yellow, was great. And, he was dealing with some emotional stuff. I believe his grandma or something personal in his family had happened, and he attributed the first goal to her.
Yeah, it was his grandmother had passed away. He had dedicated that goal to his grandmother. And if you didn't see the game, folks, he had a second yellow card and just a clumsy, awkward challenge on the end line, and that was the red card. Yeah,
but it comes off of Sebastian Driussi not giving up on a play. So often you see some of your best players throw their hands up in the air, and that's one of the reasons why this guy is different. He's a team player, but Driussi, he just gives that second effort, and it forces Kamara to make a rash decision. But now you go into halftime, and you have to take advantage of the situation. I thought Josh Wolf and his staff got it right, and it was a growth moment for not just the players, but the staff. To see Josh experiment with different lineup stuff, different tactical stuff. Sebastian Driussi playing at the left wing position, which we hadn't seen when he's played for Austin FC. He's played there for Zenit and other teams. River played at different times, but he held his hand up, said, you know what, we tried this, wasn't working, and then restored order to the team. And now it's on the players to respond. And man, Ruben Gabrielsen, the last 2 weeks, I thought he's been excellent against Minnesota, just imposing his physical will on players and then coming up with the goal. It was a tale of two halves, and it was just refreshing to see the team come out on top.
So he had 2 wins to start the season, and I don't think I have to remind folks what I called those. Cincinnati and Miami, 2 of the worst teams in the East, 5-0, 5-1. Those are bonus games, so is DC. If you don't know what a bonus game is, it's a cross-conference game against a team that's not expected to make the playoffs. You can win the game, you get the points. Congratulations, that's awesome. That'll get you to the playoffs, but it doesn't prevent other teams in your playoff in your conference from picking up points. Thereby, it's a bonus game. What does this team need to prove to establish their bona fides in your mind? As I think they have playoff bona fides. I don't think there's any doubt about that at this point. They have the talent. They're starting to do the things I think that Josh Wolf wants them to do, if not always on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it could be a little more organized at times. I think we could both agree. But what do they need to do to truly establish themselves in your mind as a player in the West? Or are they already there?
They're not there yet, but they're growing. And it's getting points on the road. At home, Q2 Stadium is becoming a fortress. If you look back to the game against Seattle, yes, Seattle came off short rest, and Seattle did what they had to do, and that's what separates the Seattles, the Portland Timbers, when it counts late on in the season. They can go to some of the hardest places, and I think you're seeing that from Nashville. They can go to some of the hardest places to play in the league and get something out of the game and not be playing at their best. In the last 2 games from Austin FC, it wasn't their best brand of football, but they got results. They got back-to-back wins, and then consistency. You have to be consistent in this league to be a playoff team, and then once you become a playoff team, anything can happen. We've seen it in Major League Soccer, but I just think just getting something on the road creates, I'm going to use some Ted Lasso-isms, belief. You have to have belief, and this team believed at halftime, and talking to some of the players, they believed that they could get something out of the game. And once that first goal went in, it was, oh, wow, 1 point. Oh, wow, let's go for 3. And that's ambition. And then the other Ted Lassoism, you got to be a goldfish. At halftime, a bunch of goldfishes came out second half, completely different team. But I like what I'm seeing from this year's Austin FC team, because You have one more game. Your next game, yes, they have Open Cup against SAFC, which is going to be one heck of a game between those two.
Oh, you've got some skin in that game, huh?
I'm dubbing it the Lahud Derby. You know, it's in my.
Give me your preview. Give me your Open Cup preview, man. Because Josh Hackle, I missed out on that this morning. It's a great matchup. This is Hill Country, baby.
Yeah, it's a barbecue cup between these two. SAFC, they're a good team at getting results. They're a very defensive-minded team. They're going to sit back and hit you on the countered, excuse me. And they play a back five, and it's the third time Austin FC will have faced a back five come Sunday, because Vancouver plays a back five, DC plays a back five, and SAFC plays a back five. And I think this is going to look very similar to what DC tried to do, which is just be vertical, be direct, win second balls, and very much the Open Cup type of game that we see. And it could be a potential trap game, but mentality and how you approach it makes all the difference. The teams that play well against USL teams early on in the Open Cup really just come out of the gates and seek that first goal. And I think that it would behoove Austin FC to come with the right mentality.
So tomorrow night, U.S. Open Cup MLS teams have officially entered the competition. ESPN Plus to watch those matches. I see Bay City's in here requesting. Sorry, Bay City's not gonna approve that request, but I will be watching you against the Earthquakes. Last question, Michael. Give me a quick answer on this one. Who's impressed you most outside the obvious guys within the squad? And the obvious ones, the Driussis, Diego Fagundes, etc. Who's a not so obvious player who's impressed?
I'm going to say his name because I think he has the potential to go to Europe. And you heard it here first on the Power Rankings. Danny Pereira. I know a lot of people, and a lot of people listening to the show, and some people who are not on the show today, we won't name names, question him being the number one draft pick. This kid's a baller. His poise on the ball, just his ability to get out of pressure, get out of tight spaces. He's not naturally a deep-lying playmaker. He could end up evolving into one of the best deep-lying playmakers in the league in a few years' time. Very high on this kid. When Josh Wolf put him back to that defensive midfield position, it was like clockwork. The team started functioning again.
Beautiful. Hey, can I ask you what role did you have in the parade on Monday?
I was the one that had the flares. I had flares. It's almost like it was like Con Air. I had flares cueing the team in the Austin Bergstrom.
You're spinning the baton at the front of the procession. 7-game champions, Austin FC.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
No.
Oh, Michael, great to chat with you, man. Yeah. As always, I owe you a nice red wine at some point here. Okay.
No, thanks for having me on. It's always good to banter.
All right, dude. All right, let's keep it rolling to number 7, Orlando City. Miguel Gallardo is here. And Miguel, I want to say that you might have been the original Power Rankings guest. Like, looking back in my DMs, that might have been you. You're muted right now, so just want to make sure you know that, just to throw it out. There you go, unmuted.
Well, I didn't know that, man, but what an honor.
Yeah. Oh, what an honor. What an honor.
What a day it's been so far, but good to be here again. Hello to everybody, and enjoying the conversation, of course.
Erkan Kara, tell me about what you've seen from him, because if I'm looking around the league at guys that have progressed, let's say, over the course of this season the most, it feels to me like Erkan Kara is really starting to show us his quality, and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I enjoyed him a lot since he got here, and obviously, part of our job was do a little bit of a scouting report when we found out of the possibilities of a player like that coming to the league. And if you look at his highlight tape, he can score all kinds of goals. He's got a great long distance shot. He's a classic number 9, but as he has proven in this league, he can get out of the box and provide some service, and he's got a lot of quality. You can combine with him. He's a presence on the field, which you need that. I feel it's important to have a big presence to occupy those center backs and make them think about leaving a player 1v1. Obviously, that opens up space for players around him. Pato has enjoyed playing with him a lot because of that ability to occupy those center backs and quick combination plays like he did this weekend. It's difficult sometimes for those guys that are coming from Europe, from particular cultures, because to adapt to the country, you just don't know how quickly they're going to be able to do it. And when you think about how heavy of a South American culture we have here at Orlando City. Van der Vaart is a player that I still think is struggling with adapting, right? Robin Janssen, it took him a little bit, but now he's fully integrated with the team. He's a guy that obviously coming from Sweden. So I'm really pleased to see him starting to understand each other movements, because I think what makes an attacking 3-4, whatever it may be, good is those associations and how well they understand each other and those little moments of the game. A coach can, work on sequences and patterns of play and style of play on how to get the ball from the goal to the final third. But ultimately, is that individual quality and that understanding between each other's players' movements and being proactive because they know each other very well is, I think, what makes the difference. And in the beginning of the season, we were seeing a lot of half chances from Orlando City. I think it was one of the best teams from getting the ball from their own half to the other to the final third, but not seeing a lot of good chances come from that. I think they were one of the lowest, in fact, through the first 4 or 5 games. And I think a lot of it had to do with that. This player is really learning to integrate with each other. And remember, Djordje Mihailovic had an ankle injury in the beginning of the season in preseason, so that set him back for a couple of weeks. And those 2 or 3 weeks were incredibly important in the delay of the understanding with all the players. So, obviously that goal that he scored, that strike was ridiculous. He had Elo Room doing the mannequin challenge there, but just a player.
Oh God, just the window he fit that through. I honestly can't blame Room for not understanding or seeing or predicting that a ball could fit through that space. But what a goal that was from Kara. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out, MLSsoccer.com or the MLS YouTube page. There's a bunch of guys on my mind with Orlando right now, whether it be Rodrigo Schlegel, who's been pushed into a starting role, got his first goal and honored his father this weekend, or it's Pato, who seems to be on the comeback player of the year trail that I knew and believed that he would be on, or Facundo Torres, who's starting to show better. What interests you most about this team as you watch it?
The easy one is Pato, right? Because, Andrew and everybody listening here, we know the quality of Pato, but we also know what has been the biggest storyline in his career. And we were all sort of hesitant to believe what he could achieve because of his history, and his history proved to be correct in the first season. And I was very glad that they were able to bring him back the second time, because why not, especially because obviously the salary cap, you guys know that he's not a designated player. I know that there are other intricacies there, but if you have the ability to fit him without taking away a possibility of maybe another player you might be bringing in to be a game changer, then I just don't see why not. And I think they made the right decision. I think the biggest thing that I take away from Pato's performances at the moment is that I'm not sure that the club or Oscar Pareja was banking on him being so good or as good as he has been so far. But what that has done is that has bought time for Facundo Torres and Djordje Mihailovic, in my opinion. Because if Pato is not performing at the level that he is, then you add more pressure on the young guys like Facundo Torres, and obviously Djordje Mihailovic is not as young. But because they come with that designated player tag, you expect more out of them. And when you look at a designated player as a striker to get 2 goals so far this season, I would argue that that's not good enough if you're not paying attention to what else he's doing. And Facundo Torres, now he's got 4 assists in the season, but it's taken him a bit to get adjusted to the physicality and the speed of the league. It's faster and it's stronger than the Uruguayan first division. So I think the fact that Pato has sort of carried the team of times has allowed Facundo a little bit of freedom, has released a little bit of pressure also from Djordje Mihailovic to hit the ground running and really turn in the performances that they were brought here to do. So I think that for me has been really special. And I don't think anybody would argue that pound for pound, Pato has to be one of the most, if not the most talented player in the league.
Holding at 7. By the way, I just want to say I believed in Pato from the start. I know that it didn't work out, but he's always been embedded in my heart for whatever reason. I don't know why. Orlando second in the East, last one, and then we'll keep it rolling here, Miguel. Are there any concerns for Oscar Pareja? Is center back a concern?
Well, it would be foolish for me to say that Rodrigo Schlegel was a like for Antonio Carlos, right? I think Antonio Carlos is one of the top center backs in the league, and he had been playing really well for Orlando City. And Rodrigo Schlegel is a guy that you could count on come in and do a job. I don't think he has the projection offensively that Antonio Carlos may have in terms of carrying the ball when all channels are blocked, and he can dribble past the halfway line and find the pass and break a line. And of course, defensively, I mean, he's a guy that loves tackling. Have you seen him? He celebrates every time he makes it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. He's just as a human, he's a great human to have in Major League Soccer. In addition to being the player that he is,
as passionate as it gets, right? And of course, I think there was a little bit of a concern, but you got to take it one game at a time. Rodrigo Schlegel was under the shadows of Antonio Carlos and Robin Janssen. He was the guy that whenever one of them went down, he would step in and kind of do the job. But as the other one got healthy, well, they take their place back. But I think Rodrigo has a real opportunity here to have continuity and see what they can do, because it doesn't matter how well you practice. If you don't have continuity, it's difficult to figure out, even yourself as a player, how high you can get. And of course, Rodrigo doesn't have the same, abilities on the ball, but he's a leader in the back line. You can hear his voice from the booth, right? Trying to organize. He's an incredibly likable dude. Everybody loves the guy on the team. And I think that alone, helps him, helps maybe some of the things that maybe he doesn't possess in terms of ability. So, so far, 2 clean sheets, a goal, and
right.
And what else can you ask for, right? I mean,
There you go.
I don't think it gets better than that.
It does not right now. Second in the East, Orlando City. Always enjoy chatting with you, Miguel. Always a good time, man. Thank you for joining.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, it's now time for the debut of Chuck Booth over at CBS Sports. Been waiting to have Chuck on to talk Philadelphia Union for a while now, who dropped 2 spots from number 1 to number 3 with the loss against Toronto. Chuck, hit that unmute button and join me, man. This is our inaugural journey together. It's our first time speaking. We've DM'd, but we've never spoken, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're hyping me up just to talk about them falling down the power rankings.
Hell yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, you're not the Union. You're special, even though you're not number 1 anymore. Tell me what you saw this week, other than a clear red card on Jaden Nelson that didn't get called.
Well, I mean, I'm happy that you went into that and not me, because basically without that red card, like, the Union are still undefeated. So it is a little hard to take a lot from that Toronto game, outside of the fact that the Union almost had like their best attacking game, at least with chance creation, but just the ball wasn't going in the back of the net. And that it really leads to Mikel Ura. And while there was the good of him getting his first assist in a Union shirt, it feels like only a matter of time until he really goes on a goal scoring run, kind of similar to even what Karol Swiderski did.
How much of a concern is that? I mean, it feels inevitable. I want it to be inevitable. I want this Union team to sort of reach their potential. And to do it, we all know what they need to do, which is get consistent production and more efficient production from ideally the top 2 forwards on the roster in Carranza and Ura, or even better from the 4 guys that they have that provide depth, as well as Sergio Santos and Corey Burke. But it hasn't happened. What are the indications that it is going to happen? I mean, it seems like Jim Curtin believes. Are you getting sort of any underlying numbers? Are you getting like reporting on your end where they're saying, I see it, it's about to happen? Like, what do we have to count on with these guys?
Well, with Carranza, like, it is happening.
That's
like
true.
With both the goals and assists, that's something we never saw with him in Miami. Like, he looks like an entirely different forward playing for the Union now. Just when it comes to confidence, having strikers, if he plays the ball across the face of goal, who can actually knock it in. He's doing all the right things. And then with Ura, it's just so many. It's more about like his feel for the game when he's actually playing, because also for for a good striker to score a lot of goals, they have to take a lot of shots, which also involves missing a lot of shots. And you can see that like he's taking a lot of his shots from good positions. They're just going straight at the keeper. But considering that with both his visa issues and getting injured in his first match off the bench, he's missed a lot of critical time with the team for just getting into a feel for the game. But as long as he's looking sharper every game that he plays, which is what he's doing so far, I don't really see a reason to be concerned about the lack of goals yet.
What's Jim Curtin saying about this team, about his forwards, about the position that the Union now occupy in the league, which I think is a pretty comfortable, not just playoff team, but potentially elite team?
Yeah, I mean, for Jim Curtin, he's about as happy as he can be. I mean, there's clearly area for improvement, because even in talking about the Toronto match, and like it's like, yeah, while winning the expected goals battle is good, the only thing that matters are goals on the board, and they didn't get enough of those. So got to go out during the next game and actually do that. But when you have such a stout defense like the Union has, it's really hard to complain very often, because it's like this isn't a team that's really ever going to go on a long losing streak.
Home against Montreal this weekend. That's a big opportunity. Same against Djordje, who we've talked about a ton here. One of my favorite questions to ask folks who are watching every single game and who maybe can devote a little bit more time than I can when I try to cover 28 teams is what's the pleasant surprise, or what's the most interesting storyline that people outside the market aren't paying attention to or watching? For you, what is that with the Union these days?
Well, I mean, the pleasant surprise is easily Nathan Harriel taking the right back job and absolutely running with it. Like he's definitely establishing his place as one of the best young defenders in MLS right before our eyes.
Give me some insight, man. Tell me what he's doing.
I mean, essentially, like, I mean, outside of just locking down everyone, I know at least the last time I looked, I haven't checked recently, but he's up in the top 10 in MLS for most defensive metrics, both tackles and interceptions, coming in for an important position for the Union since they play with no wingers. The right back needing to cover that entire side of the field.
That's pretty good. Give me your best Open Cup matchup, and I'll let you get back to it. I know you're working on a preview for CBS Sports, so give me your best Open Cup matchup this week for MLS teams. Tell people how they can follow you and get at your work, and we'll call this debut a wild success.
I think for my best Open Cup matchup outside of San Diego Loyal and Landon Donovan hosting the LA Galaxy, it's getting down to a battle for Miami with Miami FC hosting Inter Miami. They're already throwing some fun shots on Twitter about the stadium situation and having free parking and $10 tickets to FIU Stadium. So there's going to be quite an atmosphere for that one.
That's the right way to do it.
And then you can find my writing at CBS Sports, and then follow me on Twitter at Chuck Booth Sport, and that's sport, not sports, because Twitter has a character limit.
There you have it. You can find him right now. Go hit his Maviter, give him a follow, and go check him out at CBS Sports. Chuck, I appreciate you, man. Best of luck today with your Open Cup stuff, and we'll be reading. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, Alicia, jump in here. I know you're a listener right now, so I'm going to invite you to speak real quick, and we can talk some LAFC. Alicia, how's it going? Oh, dang. The dreaded mute button got you. Unmute, Alicia.
I'm here.
Okay. No, this is not our first rodeo. We know when the mute button trips us up. I'm guilty of that as well. LAFC top of the Supporter Shield standings. LAFC with a 3-1 win against Sporting Kansas City. They're up 2 spots to number 2. We'll discuss why they're not number 1 with Ari in just a second. This is a hell of a start to Steve Cherundolo's first, at least first division managerial career, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much almost exactly what you would have hoped for, I think. I mean, obviously the rivalry didn't go quite what they were expecting, but other than that, I think it's been pretty smooth sailing. And I think that he's done a good job so far in making some in-game substitutions that have been pretty effective. And so that's obviously burnishing his reputation early as well.
How is this this team, which has many of the same pieces, but not all, and we can talk about that in a second. There's been some significant adds this offseason. In the way that they play, what's the compare and contrast for you between this and Bob's teams?
I just think that there's a little more balance on both sides of the ball. I mean, they're still very much an attacking team, but they're not quite as hell for leather as they've been. And, you know, when things are working really well, that approach is super fun to watch. And if you score 6 goals, but the other team scores 3, it's not that big of a deal. But once you get to the point where you score 1 goal and the other team's scoring 4, it's not quite as fun. And I think a combination of the players that have been added and maybe just a little bit more, turning the dial back a little bit. So it's a little bit more of a balanced approach. I think has really been working. They seem to be finding their mojo again, but I think they've been pretty strong in defense, and so that's a really good sign, I think, moving forward.
Who's the standout in the back line for you?
Well, I think it's game to game. It kind of changes, but I definitely think Mamadou Fall it is so impressive, just considering his age and the fact that he hasn't even really played a full season of MLS ball yet. But also, Jesus David Murillo has had a resurgence. I think he was pretty disappointing last season, but I think he's come back and come on stronger. And then, of course, in goal, Maxime Crepeau, being kind of the backstop, having a settled number one, somebody who I think commands the respect of a number one has helped a lot. And so he's able to put out any fires that may get back there. But I think all in all, the team has, kind of individually all raised their levels. And, so far it's working.
Have you talked to John Thornton at all about maybe what he learned or sort of figured out in previous windows that led to this offseason of what was very seemingly targeted MLS experience, interleague trades, whether it be Kellen Acosta or Ilie or Crepeau or fill in the blank with a number of others? Like, did something change? Did he have a realization? Did he just say, okay, well, this is, I know what this team needs. It's not to get more of the Ginella types or the Diego Palacio types. It's to get Ryan Hollingshead. It's to get these guys that can understand the league and take us over the top. Do you feel like there was maybe sort of an aha moment for him?
There definitely was an aha moment, and I would say that was missing the playoffs last year. I think that the team had a lot of talent last season, and the underlying numbers throughout 2021 were really good for LAFC. It was just they had a season-long slump in terms of being unlucky. So it wasn't like they were just like abject. It was kind of a fluky situation. So in that regard, I'm not entirely surprised that they've bounced back so quickly so far this season. Having said that, I think it was pretty obvious that the team needed a little bit more MLS experience. And, I think there's a lot of teams out there that kind of wax and wane when it comes to looking at the internal market. I think sometimes GMs around the league get kind of fixated on going after, the hot new thing, getting that import from wherever, trying to set the league on fire. And sometimes you just need a guy who's played 150 times in MLS, who may not be able to command a $10 million transfer fee down the line, but who's going to, be dependable, get good performances out of more often than not. And so I think to an extent that there was definitely a turn towards, let's look at getting more MLS experience in the offseason. But at the same time, I think it also has been a process of those young imports that the team has brought from Latin America and Africa, giving them time to season and get some experience themselves. And now they're getting to a point where they have really come to grips with MLS, and I think that they're contributing as well.
Do you think we've seen, and I guess I know my answer to this question, it's no. Do you think we've seen anywhere close to the best of this attacking trio and Chicho and Brian and Carlos?
Well, no, because they've barely played together this season. But I think it's a good sign that Arango is finally getting some run. He scored the last 2 games. It's disappointing that Rodriguez went down with a hamstring injury, but Kwadwo Opoku has been really good so far this season. I think he's been, quietly a really consistent performer and somebody who, he's one of those like quick, inside forward winger types who try stuff. And, sometimes he can pull something off that's pretty audacious. I think some attacks, especially for attacks that are kind of on the older side, they need somebody like that to be a little different in as far as the dynamism. And then Vela, he started out the season really hot, but he's actually been on a little bit of a cold streak by his standards the last few weeks. So, he's been contributing, but he hasn't really gotten the production the last couple games. So, I think there's obviously a lot higher levels that that attacking line can be at. But so far so good. They're game to game. There's usually a guy or two who's contributing, so I think that's a good start.
Room to grow for this LA team, and that's got to be a little scary for the Western Conference when they're averaging 2.29 points per game, 16 from 7 games, leading the Supporters Shield standings, tied with the Union at this point in time. Last one, and I'll let you go, and I'm going to guess that you know what the last one is going to be until the contract situation is settled. Any new news, any thoughts, anything different on the Carlos Vela contract sitch?
I'm a little bit concerned it's still dragging on. We were told a few weeks ago it would be wrapped up in a few weeks, and it's not. So, and I think it was pretty smart of Steve Cherundolo to say, yeah, I don't talk about contracts when he was asked about it last week. It's a pretty savvy way for the coach to, kind of sidestep being asked about that 400 times. He's going to be asked about that a couple dozen times, but, not 6 times every press conference. So that was pretty smart by him. But I think it remains a concern until we get some sort of resolution. And obviously LAFC have some, officially have an open DP slot, but the Vela situation definitely needs to be resolved one way or another, or else it's going to be resolved for them in a couple months now. So it's coming up.
Do you think, let's say they re-sign Carlos, and I think that's my expectation. I think it probably is yours as well. Let's say they re-sign him, they still have the DP spot open. Do you expect to use that in the summer? Do you think they would?
Yes, I think I would be surprised if they don't get another designated player in the summer. They've been scouting for this for over a year. So,
what position you think?
That's a good question. I've gotten some whispers over kind of where they're looking for players, but I think it's more than likely going to be somebody in, a forward role, an attacking role. But no, I haven't gotten a good enough hint as to exactly where they're going to be playing on the field. But we'll see. That's obviously the big question for the team moving forward.
Well, LAFC, an interesting one this year. And if you're a listener of Extra Time, you would argue that we seem to be always interested in them. And you're probably right about that. Soccer Musings, Alicia Rodriguez, follower, of course, SB Nation, doing the best work possible on all the California teams. And we love having you on the show. Alicia, thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. I keep saying we. To those listening, I don't know why I'm saying we. Doyle's not here. But in absentia, still a huge part of this show. We finish with Ari Lelandwall at number 1 with the Seattle Sounders. Ari, are you there, man? I can hear you. You're here to explain to all the people out there how Seattle can be number 1 and lose to Inter Miami, who are 23rd. When they're, I don't even think the Seattle Sounders are in the playoff field right now. Explain, Ari. 11th place Seattle Sounders. How could they? How could the voters do this?
I can explain that. It's actually a very easy question. It's a softball, really. The answer is that they're number 1 in the power rankings, despite being 11th on the table, because they're playing in a CONCACAF Champions League final.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, you might have heard that news. It's pretty big news.
Know nothing about that.
The biggest story in the league right now.
Not going to Seattle for the final second leg. That won't be me. If you see, it'll be a Wiebe impersonator there. It certainly wouldn't be me.
I will see you here, Wiebe. We'll be hanging out in Seattle, and they're in a situation where this is kind of the culmination of everything they've been working for organizationally over the last few years. It was one of the first things Garth Lagerwey said he was prioritizing when he first got here in 2015. So that's what this season is all about right now. The league, everything that's going on in the league season is secondary to that. I think as far as the power rankings go, the simplest way to probably think of it is that, yes, if you look at the table right now, their record, their points per game and goal differential are all middling, as you said. But if you just combine it into their all comps numbers and factor in their CCL form into that, their record and goal differential would both be on the upper tier to elite side. So that explains it there. And as far as what you can read into the result against Inter Miami, they rotated their entire lineup, save for one guy, 10 of the 11 players. Javier Arriaga was the only first choice 11 starter that was playing in that game. So I don't think, there's really not much you can read into there as far as the big picture quality of the team or anything like that. But I just think the reality is this season is all about CCL right now. 100%, all the eggs are in that basket. And that is the story going on here right now.
What do you think, Ari? Do you think that the Sounders organization and fans would be like rank the emotional outpouring? Sounders win CCL, fans, front office, all ecstatic, versus Sounders lose CCL and other fan bases also ecstatic. Which do you think is more? Because I don't feel the MLS for RSL vibes this time around. I don't think the rest of the league is, at least the supporters and people within front offices, I don't actually think they're rooting for Seattle. I think they want to be the first.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think as far as the fan base in Seattle, CCL is kind of funny because it really just depends on what type of fan you're talking to, how much weight they put on it. The hardcore fans really put a lot of weight on CCL and care a lot about it. And then if you talk to a more casual fan, they might be like, why are we rotating in league play for this competition that I don't really care about and stuff. But I think here there is a pretty widespread understanding, I would say, of the weight of this occasion. The final in Seattle, they've already sold a ton of tickets. I'm expecting them to put at least 50,000 and probably up into the 60,000s in Lumen for that game. And as far as the rest of the league rooting against Seattle, I would say I've sensed a little bit of that where, typically you do see kind of this MLS camaraderie where people that are fans of the league will kind of get behind any team that's making a run in CCL. Maybe you're seeing less of that with the Sounders this year because it's Seattle and people like to root against Seattle and see them fall on their faces. But I think there's probably a fair amount of sentiment too where people do want to see an MLS team get it done regardless of who it is. That's always kind of the approach that I've taken to it. Anytime any team is making a run at it, I want to see them get it done. It's it's great that it happens to be Seattle who's making the run at it this year, but
very convenient for you.
It's not as convenient for me. But I've been pretty consistent in the past I just want somebody to get it done so that talking point is over with.
Somebody's got to uncork the bottle so that we can all drink. You know what I mean? And the sooner that happens, the better. Now, you also have the U17s doing their thing in GA Cup back-to-back. You've got some other on-field stories. What's the best non-obvious on-field story? Could be with the first team. Could be the U17s. Could be otherwise for you for the Sounders this year so far.
I think in the early season this year, the answer to that has to be Obed Vargas. He came into preseason as, one of these talented homegrowns that you didn't really know what to expect from. He's only 16. How's he going to do at the first team level? And he earned that contract during preseason. And I've just been so impressed with how he's slotted in and taken on a heavy load of minutes. And it's not just the fact that he is playing regular minutes and holding his own and doing well. This guy, he really has very tangible, positive impacts on the game every time he's on the field. It seems like the upside just seems so high, and I look forward to it every time he's on the field. It's very quickly become a thing where it's not like when he's playing, you don't find yourself being like, oh man, like what could happen? 16-year-olds out there against these grown men, like this is kind of nerve-wracking. No, like he is he just looks so comfortable and just so good on the ball. His passing, I've really enjoyed getting to watch him in the early going, and it's just going to be fun to see how much of this obvious upside he can tap into.
Beautiful thing. See a 16-year-old who would be eligible for that U17 team on the field for the first team in CCL doing this thing, and the U17 still having enough depth to go win GA Cup. All right, appreciate you coming on here and answering for all of Seattle as it pertains to the number one spot in the allocation order. God, how many orders can we possibly have in this league? And the power rankings. That's the end of this show. It's gone on too long. Big thanks to all of our guests, from Ari, of course, to Alicia Rodriguez, to Chuck Booth, to Miguel Gallardo, to Michael Lahoud, to Patrice Bernier, to Glenn Davis, Felipe Cardenas, Michele Giannone, and the new profile picture that I saw for you, Marcelo. Don't think I didn't notice you changing that during this Twitter Spaces. It's beautiful, man. You look great. That's it for us for week 7. Go check out the Power Rankings at MLSsoccer.com and the MLS app. You can listen to this full show on the MLS Today podcast feed if you didn't catch it live. We do it live at 2 p.m. Eastern every single Tuesday. And by we, I mean Doyle and myself. I'm sure he will be back next week. Subscribe to that. You can get all the MLS Today shows as well as MLS After Darks. And you should also subscribe to Extra Time in the Call-Up in case you, for whatever reason, need MLS and North American Soccer Talk 7 days a week. Enjoy your afternoon, everybody. I'll see you around.